Salute family, this is Black Truth United, and today we're going to be covering a topic that I haven't heard many people covering in depth. So I want to cover that myself here. And the topic for today is mental impairment, the I'm white and I say so frontier. Now this video is not going to be talking about mental manipulation through mind control, the MK Ultra stuff. None of that. We're focusing on specifically mental impairment. And the reason why I say mental impairment is because that term covers the psychotic claims, it covers the regular mental illness, and it also covers neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism, which is technically not a mental illness. And it's going to be very clear by the end of this video how mental impairment is essentially just the new version of I'm white and I say so. Whatever suspected white supremacists say goes. But before I get started, let me clear this up. Fair use. This is for research, scholarship, and news reporting. Fair use. Fair use. Alright, first we're going to check out this video from a semi-popular show called The Mentalist. And I'll just jump in from time to time.
Joe, hey, you mind? Sure thing. Don't make a mess. Cop humor. Not funny. I'm supposed to be finding out who put you up to this. You see, my friends think you're an idiot.
Everybody says that. Sometimes they're not nice.
Yes.
Now, to give you context, this guy is the main character of the series, and he's essentially good at detecting subtleties. Now, he notices that after a series of murders, the only common thread is this guy. But he's quote-unquote autistic. But anyway, let's continue watching.
Being a fool gives you a sort of power, doesn't it? You're there, and you're not there. It's like having a wizard's cloak of invisibility.
I don't understand what you're saying, sir, but I like wizards. The other man said that he'd get me a root beer, but he never did.
Revenge is a hard road, isn't it? It's like when Captain Ahab was chasing Moby Dick. The whale died, all right. But the Peapod went down, too.
Pequod. Ahab's ship is the Pequod.
Exactly. The Pequod. Silly of me. Here's your copy here. I must say I'm impressed. I know English literature professors that haven't read Moby Dick.
I like whales. They eat squids.
Got him!
Looking back, I should have known it was you the first time I saw you. Only an idiot would wear a t-shirt like that to a house in mourning. An idiot or a daring killer with a warped sense of humor. You're going down for this one. You might as well go down as your real self. You have pulled off something amazing. You should be proud, in a way.
Notice how these people take pride in their killers. They almost idolize them to a certain extent. Just thought I'd point that out real quick.
That root beer coming?
Why don't you just talk to me, Thomas? There's no point in hiding anymore. I can see you.
What do you want to know?
Now pay attention very closely to what is said in the following clip.
Hello. Good to meet you. I am curious, are there two of you? Or is Tommy just an act that you put on? Please.
I'm not a mental case.
Please.
I'm not a mental case. Tommy's an act. A performance.
That you never turn off.
He amuses me. He protects me.
Because it's I'm white and I say so.
When I was 18, I jacked a car. Got caught. But when I pulled the Tommy Act, the cops let me go. I've gotten much better since then, of course.
Good enough to avenge Dave Martin's death.
3 months ago, the company finally got a permit to exploit the aquifer.
We're not going to go into the whole episode, and there are some things from that series I don't really like. But I wanted to show that case because that kind of getting away with crimes and being overlooked really only happens with SWSs. And I'm going to prove that here with the case of brendandepa. Hope I'm saying that name right. He's the autistic brother in the upper right hand corner, and many of you have probably heard of this case. So I just want to point out some of these ridiculous headlines. Listen to these code words. Hulking Florida teen brendandepa, who severely beat his teacher over the Nintendo Switch, sentenced to 5 years in prison. I know some of you have seen this story, and in that headline it fails to mention autism. In fact, in this whole article, autism is only mentioned once, very briefly, so you already knew that the fix was in. And by the way, when I first saw this story and I saw the adoptive mother, I couldn't help but think back to that racist-ass movie, The Blind Side, with a clueless Negro being taught things, looking dumb at every turn, illiterate, clueless, a big overgrown child, essentially mentally impaired. But then we heard the real story about how the white family adopted him at age 17, 18, way later, likely because they saw a talent in him and wanted to exploit it by getting rights to his story, which I'm pretty sure he's still fighting in court to this day in order to get some of those revenues. But it's just like Elder Neely Fuller says, you'll only have 3 types of relationships with the so-called dominant society: a tacky one, a terroristic one, or a trashy one. And by the way, the whole illiterate thing and mentally impaired thing, all false. But anyway, let me play the clip of this brother getting sentenced.
Now the hulking 6'6" culprit brendandepa is learning his fate.
Did you hear them use hulking again? When has that term ever been used to describe a white person? Someone help me out with that.
And his sentence is causing outrage. It turns out that brendandepa, who was 17 years old at the time of that ferocious attack in a Florida high school, is disabled. He is autistic and has a number of other disorders. And his mother says he has the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old. His adoptive mom fought back tears as she begged the judge for mercy. The student's defense attorney also pleaded with him not to send the teen to prison.
He is disabled. He can't navigate the world like you and I can.
But the judge said the video shows a level of unprovoked brutality he could not ignore.
I bet he would have ignored it had he had the complexion for the protection. I'm not going to show the video here. I'm just going to play the audio.
It captures senseless, extreme violence. Mr. Depa has never expressed not even a single bit of remorse.
No dip, he's mentally impaired. He doesn't comprehend completely what's going on.
He sentenced the teen to 5 years in prison and 15 years probation. Depa threw his head back in shock. Court TV's Julia Janae was in court.
There were many people who were shocked at the judge's decision. Many felt that this was a case of a person who should have been in a facility versus behind bars.
Obviously. And I really don't think there was enough outrage with this case because it really ingrained a new level of imwhiteandisayso when it comes to mental impairments. But now we're going to see another case. And this one, as I was doing it, it felt like I was doing a mini crime report like the professor. But anyway, let me show this to you. The United States versus Zuck. And I know you've probably never seen this before because I've never seen it before. And I couldn't find a single news story covering this in great detail with all the juicy bits and pieces perfectly packaged together by the white media. Unlike the case of Depa, but we're going to be covering it today in great detail. So this is the summary here, and pretty much what happened was this Alexander Zuck character was caught in possession of child corn on the cob and caught doing some other deviant things which we'll talk about later, and the court decided to let him off early with time served because they said that he was on the autism spectrum. Now this took a lot of effort to find, but I did get his photo. Here's the sick slimeball pedo Julian Alexander Zuck, a true monster. And by the way, doesn't this dude look like the Sid character from Toy Story? It can't just be me. Look at this. And ironically, this character in Toy Story was an abuser of his toys. But those acts pale in comparison to the level of depravity that came from this Zuck thug. And we're about to get into some pretty sick stuff, so trigger warning for this Alexander creep. So this guy is coming out of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. And here's the good for nothing judge who gave him the light sentence, which we'll read about pretty soon. Old decrepit bastard. Alright, here we go. Here are the details of the case. The undisputed evidence shows that before his arrest, Zuck amassed more than 13,800 photographs and more than 470 videos, a large proportion of which depicted a sadistic treatment of young children. Listen, I'm telling you, people who are in possession of this stuff have already done things, either minor or major, to children. Allegedly. This makes me sick. And let's continue on. He also communicated on a daily basis with a 16-year-old who was, and family, this makes me pissed off, S-ing his 5-year-old cousin, and even directed the 16-year-old to abuse the child in specific sadistic ways. This is the scum of the earth. This is evil incarnate. Can you imagine this 5-year-old, male or female? And a lot of times this community is obsessed with males, by the way, but whoever it was, a male or female, a 5-year-old on a daily basis being essayed and having someone advising his or her abuser, man, this is some sick, degenerate filth, and this Alexander Zuck character deserves to rot in hell for this, as far as I'm concerned. But let's continue reading. Following a lengthy sentencing hearing during which Zuck's recently diagnosed autism, more on that later, spectrum disorder was explained, the district court sentenced Zuck to time served of 26 months, reciting Zuck's disorder as the primary driver behind the sentence. Now you saw what happened in Depa's case, and I'm not saying there shouldn't have been a punishment for Brother Depa, but it certainly shouldn't have been 5 years in prison. But this piece of degenerate filth, essentially, whatever time Zuck was in jail awaiting his trial, he gets to count that time toward the sentencing. So apparently it took them 26 months to bring this forward, and the judge, which let me pull that picture up again. Yeah, this sick judge, if you can even call him that. By the way, his name is Richard Voorhees, a dirty, corrupt, evil zombie ass. But anyway, this guy let this demon out after only a little bit more than 2 years. And it was such a bad sentencing that they had to bring it to the 4th Circuit U.S. Court in order to get an appeal. And by the way, check this out. High functioning, apparently this child predator Zuck was an Eagle Scout and on the dean's list in college. And check this out right here. He had not been diagnosed with ASD, which is the autism spectrum disorder, until after his arrest. And that by his own endorsement, Mr. Zuck knew the actions he was taking were wrong and illegal. In other words, I'm white and I say so. He got arrested and essentially got a corrupt psychologist to go along with this diagnosis, allegedly. A quote-unquote high-functioning level of autism in order to get that get-out-of-jail-free card. And this is the kind of filth that they allow out early to walk the streets. By the way, the U.S. did have to admit that that sentencing was unreasonable. And as it says here at the very end, the court remanded for resentencing. In other words, when the smoke dies down, they'll give this child predator and allegedly child abuser, because most of these people don't stop at watching that corn on the cob. Most of them act upon those evil, degenerate, pedophilic lusts. After all is said and done, they'll probably give him another slap on the wrist. And I searched all over the web for the revised sentencing, and I could not find it. These are the kind of cases that get hidden while they scream black on black crime and have the news cameras pointed at us. But as the professor covers in the Friday crime reports, these types of crimes happen a lot more often than they'd have us believe. By the way, if you're not subscribed to Professor Black Truth, go subscribe to him now. Now I want you to contrast this story with Brother Brendandepa. 2 cases of autism, one in which it was known well beforehand that he had cognitive issues. He was mentally impaired. The other essentially did an I'm white and I say so. I say that I have autism, so let me off early. And they went ahead and did it. This is the I'm white and I say so frontier that I'm talking about. Mental impairments only matter when they say they matter. Oh, you had autism? Go ahead and hold this 5-year sentence. Oh, you got in trouble for something evil and degenerate? Just say you have autism and we'll get you released with time served. I'm white and I say so. But anyway, we're going to be moving on to a few other examples. And before before I proceed, I want to remind YouTube and whatever other platform this is on that this is fair use. These clips are for research, scholarship, and news reporting. Fair use. Now, I want you to pay attention to how mental impairment was used in the opposite way during the MLK Jr. assassination investigation. Pay close attention to the details here.
They ran through his flop house and looked the old, poor, snaggletooth white lady in the face named Grace Stevens.
Well, she was the one in the room with the door open in the hallway. She's the one who saw the person come out of the bathroom and run down the step after she heard the shot. She's the one who was showing pictures later on and said, no, this is not the man. I said, she described the man so that there are at least two descriptions of the man, the one that fits the person she saw and the one that fits James Earl Ray. Then when she would not yield, they took the drunk husband, the drunk common law husband, as the one who had been the witness. And of course, he had seen nothing. They put words into his mouth and got him to give the description that they gave. And then, in order, as though to protect themselves, they saw to it that Grace got confined to a mental hospital as mentally incompetent.
I'm white and I say so. Family, they've been doing this stuff for years. If they want to invalidate your testimony, they call you a loony. If you're white and they want to let you off the hook for a crime, they'll also call you a loony. It's I'm white and I say so times 10. Now watch what happens when this eyewitness was broken out of the mental institution she was put in.
10 years after being in that nut house, when some decent folks decided to run and steal her out, when they crawled next to her bed in the middle of the morning, she never knew it was good people. She thought it was insane government people. And when they shined that light in her face, she said, I tell you now what I told you then, that's not the man. And the most mighty government in the world could not make her lie and say it was James Earl Ray.
Now he was putting some extras on that, but you get the point. So hopefully you're seeing a reoccurring pattern here. This is the I'm white and I say so frontier. Alright, let's get a few other examples.
Outrage as the monster known as the frat boy cannibal is declared not guilty by reason of insanity and won't go to prison.
4 words come to mind. White, rich boy justice.
2 words come to mind. White supremacy. For those who don't know, that was the guy who was caught eating a person's face, quite literally. So when you read books like The Delectable Negro and you hear about stories like Jeffrey Dahmer's, don't think that stuff has ended. That's alive and well. But anyway, let's keep going.
The Kalamazoo man accused of gunning down 7 people during a random killing spree back in February says that he'll use insanity as a defense if and when the case goes to trial.
This new information coming during a meeting between lawyers on both sides and the judge.
Notice the key words, if and when this goes to trial. This guy knows that despite the severity of his crimes, he may still get off without this even going to trial, especially with the closed-door hearings that they like to have. I'm white and I say so. And I just wanted to point out for the so-called dominant society, look at who is most affected. These are the victims. So you have this toxic outrage for us, but look at who's getting hurt in the process. Let's keep going.
Now lawyers for James Holmes suffer a setback. The judge ruling Colorado's insanity defense process does not violate.
I'm sorry, I have to pause it here. Who did this dude's hair? They have him out here looking batshit crazy. They probably told him to look like his best impression of the damn Joker. I have to hand it to his defense team. They know how to cook up these insanity defenses. But anyway, let's keep going.
His constitutional right against self-incrimination or his right to remain silent, making it likely he'll plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
These are the people who were killed, whose lives were affected. You still want to keep doing this? Alright, let's move on. Now this next example is going to be very revealing. It's when a psychiatrist actually told the truth, but it's likely because of the people who were affected by this violent criminal.
Jurors hearing from a psychologist who tested the Parkland school shooter for memory impairments and said he was, quote, grossly exaggerating his symptoms. Local 10's Christina Vasquez has the latest now from court.
He's grossly exaggerating severe mental illness.
State rebuttal witness Dr. Robert Denny.
This is what you see when somebody's playing games with you. He's grossly exaggerating very severe psychiatric problems, as well as somatic concerns, body concerns, cognitive concerns, and memory complaints.
Finally, it's about time they started revealing what we've all known to be a fact for the longest.
Evaluated the Parkland shooter.
If his attention problems were as bad as this, he couldn't actually take the test. It just doesn't make sense.
Presenting data.
His scale is, as you can see, almost off the chart, with him attempting to look very, very bad on this test. That's an indication of pretty extreme exaggeration.
On how Nicholas Cruz may have tried to trick a range of tests.
In plain words, was the defendant faking?
Based on my clinical judgment, I believe it was because he was trying to look more impaired than he is.
Man, these people are such cowards. They commit crimes, kill a whole bunch of people, and then cop out pleading insanity, claiming they have mental impairments, severe mental illness. But hey, once again, let's see who the victims were. And while this is not always the case, most of the time it is. People have a tendency of committing crimes against people who are close in proximity to them. So, keep playing games with this "I'm white and I say so" nonsense, instead of holding people accountable with a system of justice. Fair use, fair use. This next one's going to be one that some of you have probably seen. If you haven't seen it, make sure you're sitting down.
He got drunk, then jumped behind the wheel of his pickup truck and plowed down 4 people in a drunken haze. So why isn't Ethan Couch behind bars? Keep in mind, he's just 16, too young to legally drive with any alcohol in his system. And in this case, his blood alcohol measured .24, 3 times the legal limit in Texas. Eric Boyle's wife and daughter were both killed.
Once again, look at who's affected.
We had over 180 years of life taken, future life, not 180 years lived, but 180 years of future life taken. And 2 of those were my wife and daughter.
Investigators say surveillance tape shows Couch and his friends stealing beer from a Walmart store in June.
If those were some brothers, they'd be in juvie for years.
Then they got drunk at a party. Leaving there, police say Couch gunned his pickup, going nearly 70 miles per hour in a 40.
Again, there's no way a black person could have gotten away with that.
Just about 400 yards down the street, he slammed into Holly and Shelby Boyles, who had stopped to help Brianna Mitchell fix a flat tire. Youth pastor Brian Jennings was driving by and had also stopped to help. All of them were killed.
When are you going to start producing real justice? If never, don't come crying to me when these kind of things happen.
Ethan Couch was charged with 4 counts of intoxication manslaughter and tried as a juvenile. In one of the most bizarre defense strategies we've ever heard of, attorneys for Couch blame the boy's parents for his behavior that night, all because of how they raised him. A psychologist and defense witness testified that the boy suffered from something called affluenza.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Bro, I'm out, man. That nigga's tripping.
So I did a deep dive on this word, and I found out that the first reference to it was from the early 1900s. And it was essentially a made-up word to describe rich pricks, but using it in the form of a mental impairment that just arbitrarily forced this young, unsuspecting teen to make bad choices and to kill a whole bunch of people. I've never seen this kind of nonsense in my entire life. And they got away with this. They literally just made this up in order to get this mass killer off. And remember, they got a psychologist to sign off on this "I'm white and I say so" defense.
A psychologist and defense witness testified that the boy suffered from something called affluenza, a lifestyle where wealth brought privilege and there were no consequences for bad behavior. He cited one example where Couch, then 15, was caught in a parked pickup with a naked 14-year-old girl who was passed out.
Now you know what was happening there. And again, if that was a brother with some naked 14-year-old girl, he'd be thrown under the jail. I've never heard of a case like this before.
Couch was never punished, according to the psychologist.
Of course, it's "I'm white and I say so."
He also testified that Couch was allowed to start drinking at a very early age, even drive when he was just 13. Prosecutors fought for a 20-year sentence, but the defense argued Couch needed treatment, not prison. The judge agreed. The judge agreed.
The judge agreed. At some point, we're going to have to start holding these damn judges accountable. They are the last lines of defense in the I'm white and I say so frontier.
And gave Couch 10 years probation, plus time in alcohol rehab. No prison. No prison.
No prison. No prison for killing 4 people.
She told the court she believes Couch can be rehabilitated if he's away from his family and given the right treatment. He'll likely end up at this pricey rehab center in Newport Beach, California.
That's a luxury resort.
His father has agreed to pay the $500,000 or so that it will cost.
Taking him away from his family and teaching him to be a responsible citizen, that's a consequence.
That's a consequence? Like he forgot to do his chores, or threw a ball in the house and knocked over a lamp. This person took 4 lives, and they're talking about that's a sufficient quote-unquote consequence for his actions. If you don't get this I'm white and I say so nonsense out of here.
A consequence for killing 4 people? Not even close, says this woman, whose daughter, Brianna Mitchell, died in the crash.
He'll be feeling the hand of God. Definitely.
Yes, he will, but not in the way you probably think. Now, I just want to point out, these are the victims. Once again, this unjust system of white supremacy is what's allowing for more and more of their people to be killed off. They're hurting themselves by upholding this system. And it's gotten to the point at which they're just making stuff up, making up mental impairment excuses for all their quote-unquote heroes. I remember I was listening to a broadcast with Brother Great Black Shark. Make sure you're subscribed to him as well. He has great commentary. And he was covering Caligula, a degenerate of degenerates. All into pedophilia, blood, guts, sleeping with people's wives, minors, just all kinds of nonsense. And what they said was, hey, the reason why he was so messed up in the head and so violent and so sexually degenerate is because the cups that he was sipping from had a disproportionate amount of lead, you see. And when the lead got to his head, that caused him to have a serious mental disorder, which then caused him to participate in such evil activities. And you see, man, they just make up stuff. It's literally I'm white and I say so. With every degenerate thing that you point to, they literally just make up a mental impairment excuse out of thin air to justify it. Whenever they do some kind of crime, it's always, well, did he have any mental issues? Did society betray him? Keep playing these games. You're hurting your own. But now I'm going to give one last example, and this is on the opposite side of the spectrum. Now, while I hate this demon and hate what he did, I can't help but at least put some respect on the fact that he just came out and stated the truth. Let's roll the clip.
In his opening statement, he tried to explain to jurors who convicted him in December why he's now going against all legal advice and refusing to plead insanity. It isn't because I have a mental illness that I do not want you to know about, or because I'm trying to keep a secret. The point is that I am not going to lie to you. There is nothing wrong with me psychologically. There is nothing wrong with me psychologically.
There is nothing wrong with me psychologically.
Family, they're so used to coming up with these mental impairment excuses for all their degenerates that it literally takes one of them coming out and saying, I have no psychological disorders, in order for them to give a half an ounce of justice. And that's why I call this the I'm white and I say so frontier. Mental impairment is only important when they say it's important to focus on. If a black person is proven to have a mental issue, it's essentially dismissed. If they get arrested and don't want to take responsibility for their crime, they can just make up illnesses out of nowhere or claim insanity and get away with it for the most part. It takes everything just to convict these demonic monsters. And when you do manage to get a conviction, that judge is on the other end waiting to give the lightest sentence possible to them and the heaviest sentence possible to us. But anyway, hopefully this video has been comprehensive. I wanted to cover this in depth, and we really need to expose these kind of stories since the white media refuses to do so themselves. So with that, I'll end the video. Be one and be blessed, family. Peace.